Hello and happy Black History 365. My name is Dr. Tonicia Freeman-Foster, also known as Dr. T or Dr. TF squared. I am the CEO and co-founder of Lead Us Well, a company that focuses on leadership development and specializes in organizational culture. One of the things that I'm coming here today to talk to you about is the impact of organizational culture. So let's pause. If you had to think of your organizational culture as a fruit, what would it be? Would it be sweet like grapes? Would it be somewhere in between, maybe sweet and tangy like a raspberry? Or would it be bitter like a grapefruit or lemon? Organizational culture matters. The goal is to know that every organization has a growth and learning process. And so you may be sour or tangy today, and it may be sweet and sour or sweet in another day, just based on changes, based on things that occur. However, it is important to know that organizational culture matters. And a lot of times when we're doing work as consultants, people call us and contact us to come in and just do leadership development stuff, talk to us about leadership skills without digging beneath the surface and understanding what is happening at the root of the organization and where do these behaviors come from. It's similar to having a garden and weeds start to grow in, and instead of digging the weeds up by the root, you take some clippers and you just clip the weeds. Eventually they come back, and over time they may come back stronger and start to stifle the growth of the plants in that garden. And so if we think of our employees as roses, we want to make sure that we are addressing the culture. We want to make sure that we are addressing the root and not just doing a topical treatment, but digging all the way beneath the surface to find out why people are showing up as they are. If we're having trouble with client outcomes or staff turnover, the answer is not just having a training and hiring more staff, it's figuring out why we're having that trouble in the first place. And what I found is a lot of times people, they have problems with retention, and their goal is just to have somebody review a job announcement, or maybe they blame it on it's salary. We're not paying people enough. And those things can be true, but if your organization is experiencing consistent turnover, there's something going on at the root of the organization. There's something going on at the root of the hiring process. Or if people are being hired and they're staying for a certain period of time and then they're leaving, there's something going on with that organization's culture. It is sour. It is like a grapefruit or a lemon that is perpetuating the turnover. And so making sure that you understand where that's coming from before you just start to add things to it is critical. And so, what is organizational culture? A lot of definitions define it as a shared culture of values and beliefs. However, we have to be careful because sometimes it is shared goals and values and beliefs, but sometimes it is things that people have assimilated to or capitulated in order to survive and thrive at the organization. So what I like to say is organizational culture is how your beliefs, values, and mission statement are felt by employees, how it's felt by clients. And it's using all of the senses, how they see it, how they hear it, how they perceive it, and also what impact that has on them. What does it cause them to behave in a certain way because of those things as well? So this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I've done a lot of research in organizational culture. One of the things that I did with my dissertation is research the impact of organizational culture on the lives and well-being of people who are living with HIV. And what I found based on my focus groups and research is that people If they don't have a positive experience, patients will leave that doctor's office and they don't go back. And not only do they not return, they don't go anywhere else. And so the organizational culture and their experience is tied to hope. It's tied to their sense of value or being valued. And for a lot of these individuals, if they had a bad experience or the culture was bad, they would not go back to that doctor and they would stop taking their medication because they would internalize it as a sense of not belonging or a sense of feeling like people didn't care about their lives. And so why should they? And those were some of the exact comments. And so we want to be mindful of that. Not only does it have an impact on patients, it has an impact on staff promotions, staff job satisfaction, also staff health and well-being. People get sick from working at poor cultured companies. We want to be mindful of this because we know that things happen when people experience poor organizational cultures. Things happen when people feel like there's no way out and that this is their livelihood and they have nowhere else to go. And there's a such thing as bullycide where people die by suicide because of the pain that they're experiencing at work. And so this is not something light. It is not anything to play with, and it's something serious and something that is often overlooked as well. So we're going to talk about this today. We're going to talk about the impact of organizational culture on staff. We're going to talk about the impact of organizational culture on patients and clients. And then we're going to share some things that leaders can do to help improve and enhance the organizational culture. And it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it is something that is possible and something that we can take action on. And I feel like something we have a responsibility and a duty to take action on as leaders. So let's start by looking at the organization culture for staff. And I've highlighted several things that I want to share in terms of culture, but there are several more. We could go on all day, all week, all year long, talking about what organizational culture looks and feels and sounds like for staff. So these are some of the things that I've highlighted that have been the most common in my work. So the first is the culture of boundaries. So thinking about your organization, is everyone entitled to know everything about everyone else? Or there's just a lack of boundaries among staff or among staff and leadership? Or it could be at the opposite end of the continuum where people don't know anything about their coworkers. They just come in, do their work, put their head down. They don't know if the coworker is missing, if they came into work, if they've been sick for an extended period of time because they don't know each other. So there's a culture of just not knowing each other, and that's okay. The next culture is a culture of inclusion. Are there cliques and clubs within the organization, or are people invited and welcome to everything? Or is there an early morning coffee that people gather together in the employee lounge and only a certain group of people are invited? And it may not be an explicit invitation, but people know if you're not a part of this group, you don't show up to that. The next is a culture of communication. What is the culture of communication within your organization? Are people allowed to be a part of the decision making that goes on within the organization? Are people allowed to or given permission to share their thoughts and their feedback and ideas, even when it pushes up against the status quo? Within some organizations, there's a culture of communication, but only if it's acceptable and only if it goes along with the groupthink process. And so the question is, what happens when it's not a part of the groupthink? What happens to the individual who shares an opinion that is different or pushes up against the way the organization has always done things? The next one is a culture of collaboration and teamwork. And I've seen this in organizations where, for example, a new person is hired, and instead of helping them and supporting them, they're kind of put in this model of swim or sink. We hired you to do this job based on your resume. You were able to do it. and do it or leave. And so with that, we have to be aware that someone may be phenomenal at what they do at organization A, B, and C, and they may need additional resources at your organization because it's a different organization that has a different way of doing things. And if they're not provided with that additional support, they're not going to be able to thrive to their fullest potential. And also in the culture within this, we have to be mindful of how we accept and allow team members to work together. Is it a culture where people are afraid to take off from work or go on vacation because nothing will get done in their absence and then they'll have more work when they return? Or is a culture where we take care of each other? If you're out or you're on vacation, someone fills in for you so you don't have to worry about work while you are on vacation or while you're resting or while you're taking a me day. The next one is a culture of recognition and appreciation. How are people acknowledged at work, or are they acknowledged at all? And this is something that I've seen over and over again, and it's something so small that means so much to people. Recognizing them for doing a great job, recognizing them at the staff meeting or at the board meeting or via email, personal, or email to a group or in a newsletter saying this person did a really great job, or this person has a work anniversary coming up, or here are our work anniversaries for February or for March. That little token of appreciation goes a long way. It lets employees know that they're seen, they're heard, they're valued, and they're celebrated. And when you do it, make sure that you actually put a name to it. Not we thank everyone whose work anniversary is in February, because that could do the opposite. It could actually be more damaging and more harmful. Well, you take time to really be intentional and say, these are the people that we are celebrating work anniversaries for the month of February or the month of March. The next one is the culture of pay and promotion. How are people mentored for positions? Are we going and selecting people and mentoring them for a position, and then once it comes open, we're putting them into that position? Or is it open opportunity for everyone to be mentored, to ask questions, to be groomed for positions, and to have a fair chance at interviewing for that position? Also in pay, are people just randomly paid a salary, and you have people who are doing similar work, but their salaries are different for no apparent reason, but you see disparities in gender, you see disparities and discrepancies or in inequities in race or age. That's an issue, and that is a culture that allows that to happen. Power is another thing. Is power shared, or is it reserved for a few? Are there people who within the organization hold the power to make decisions and have power to share their voice, and other people who are oppressed by that power? Are we oppressing or are we empowering people? Those are some critical questions. And these are just some examples of the cultures that occur within organizations. So next, we're going to talk about the impact of organizational culture on patient and client outcomes. Earlier, I shared my work in my dissertation and research around talking to people and talking to clients and patients around what this looked like for them. How did organizational culture impact their life? And so these are just a few. We know that organizational culture impacts trustworthiness, impacts provider trust, communication, quality of care, and ultimately the patient outcomes. So some things that we should be aware of when we look at culture for our clients and patients is a culture of hope. When I enter into your office, do I see people who look like me? Do I see providers who look like me? Do I have a choice of providers? Are there people who look like me on the brochures? And are they smiling? Are they the picture of hope? Or are all the people who look like me on your reentry program brochures? And so being mindful and intentional about how we show up as an organization includes those things. What does the wall art look like? What languages are we speaking within our office? What is on the brochures? What type of programs do we offer? Are they culturally engaging? Are they culturally relevant? Are they provided at different times where people can get to those services if they need to and then they work? So all of those things instill hope. Do we ask people about how their family's doing, how they're doing when they enter in for appointments? Or is it just patient two for the day? Let's take their blood pressure, let's take their temperature, let's ask them a few questions, give them another prescription, and move on to the next patient. What does that feel like for the patient? Also, a culture of choice and voice. That shows up in the organization in different ways. I've had clients that I've worked with, and they had questions at their doctor's appointments, and they would, hey doctor, can I ask you some questions? And after a while they received a letter saying, you taking up too much time, and you need to go to another doctor. And so what does that look like? What does it look like for patients and clients to be a part of decision making processes? What does it look like for them to ask questions or to come in with the notebook and say, I've been having these side effects, and I'm really concerned about it, and I want to hear what you have to say. Or today, the way the person at the front desk talked to me, I didn't appreciate that, or it made me feel insignificant, and what can I do about that? How are patients able to use their choice and their voice? Or like, we need some more brochures in the front office, or the chairs out there are a little worn, like, can we get some new chairs soon, or you have any plans for new chairs? Things like that. Also, a culture of care. Are we caring for people as individuals or as a collective? Are we seeing the humans behind the patient? Are we seeing the human experience of this individual person, or have we put them in a box with other people? That group of individuals from that neighborhood, or that gender, or that race, or that insurance, they normally don't care about their well-being, or they don't follow through on their appointments. Oh, no wonder they missed that appointment and didn't call to follow up, because those individuals, they normally do that. And when we do that, we diminish hope for that individual. And it also plays it through in how we care for them. If we spend a significant time listening to what they have to say, or if it's just like, come on, get to it, let me go to the next patient, all of that plays out in our mindset and our beliefs. And so we have to be really careful about this. And so in looking at how leaders can show up is important. What can we do as leaders as we talk about organizational culture? And those are just some examples of what happens with patients and what happens with staff. But this is an ongoing conversation. And those are just examples. There are more examples that live within your organization. And if you speak with your clients, if you speak with your staff, they'll help you highlight some of those things. And I just ask, as you're asking people questions, listen, and listen to change, listen to be open to things that you thought might have been going well and they're not. And do not retaliate against people when they tell you something that you don't like. Do not penalize people if they tell you something you don't like, or you're not ready to hear, or you don't want to hear. And penalizing may look different. It may look like we're not doing home visits to that client anymore, or you missed your appointment and now you have to wait 3 months, where previously we were able to give you a quick appointment. Or this staff person spoke up and now they're no longer eligible for the upcoming position or promotion that was on the schedule for them. And so doing things like that, or just meeting them with silence or coldness after they've spoken to you about their truth, are all ways that people are penalized. And so being mindful of that. And I will say, as a leader, I think it's important that you do your work first so that you can be open to receive information that may be uncomfortable for you, that you are able to build, you have the muscle to withstand things that are not comfortable. You have the muscle to withstand people saying things that you don't want to hear, for the greater good of the organization and for the greater good of the staff experience and client experience. And so I know that organizational culture can feel like a big ball of tangled yarn sometimes in trying to find like, where do I start? If you're having trouble with that, again, talk to your clients, talk to your staff. But if you still find yourself struggling with that, I would say look at your data. What does your organization's data say about the culture? Where are there trends that are trending negatively? Are there trends in client outcomes based on race, based on gender, based on zip code? Are there trends in staff turnover based on race, based on gender, based on seniority? What is happening within your organization? A lot of times the data tells a story, and we have to get the other story from the people who are actually experiencing that. And I find that a lot of times we focus on staff turnover and doing exit interviews, but we don't take a look at what's happening with the people who are there. And they don't feel safe in communicating, this is what's happening. And we take it as, oh, people are leaving, they had a problem, and the people that are staying, they're okay. And many times that's not true. People are staying because they need the money. People are staying because they feel like they would struggle trying to find another job, or they really enjoy what they do, but they don't like the culture of the organization. And so having those conversations and being intentional is key. Also, you may work at an organization where change is tough. That's a culture of its own. What is the culture of change? Are we making just random decisions haphazardly without taking into account the information and the data, and we just making changes in the organization? Or on the other hand, is change like pushing an elephant by its butt up a hill, where it's difficult to make decisions within the organization? It's difficult to make change. And if you are working in that type of culture, I always add as a strategy, creating a microculture. How can you make small changes within your department? How can you make small changes within your programs or within your particular segment of the organization? And we'll talk more about that in a later segment. All right. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. I hope there was something that I said today that you were able to take and use within your organization. I encourage you to do one thing this week, to engage in one action. And that action may be preparing yourself as a leader to hear things that you're uncomfortable with, or scheduling some time to talk with people who that you don't hear from that often, or people that have other things to say about the organization that may create some tension and discomfort. But whatever you do something. All of us can do something. And organizational culture is important, and it's something that we can change. It is something that is hard to change a lot of times because it's connected to something deeper. It's connected to our beliefs. It's connected to the stories that we have in our minds about the organization and the services that we provide, or certain staff or certain clients. And so it requires us to self-reflect. It requires us to do more work internally. And so that's why it's easy to do topical work, to go in and have a training about leadership development and check a box, because that's something that we can do without feeling. But I encourage you to feel, I encourage you to see, I encourage you to hear, and I encourage you to lean into that discomfort and embrace it for change, for a better organization, and for a better environment for yourself, for your staff, for your client, and for your community members. All right, until next time, learn well, lead well, and live well. And thank you for your time. Take care.